The first thing she noticed was the perfume. Not her own, not the lingering scent of cheap wine and cigarettes from the bar last night, but something rich, elegant, impossible to place like jasmine mixed with danger. The second thing she noticed was the arm. Strong, feminine, draped carelessly over her waist as if it had always belonged there. And that was when Avery opened her eyes and realized she wasn't in her own bed. She jolted upright, heart racing, pulling the blanket tight against her chest. The sunlight slanted across the unfamiliar apartment high ceilings, glass walls overlooking Manhattan, the kind of place she had only ever seen in movies. And then on the silk sheets, still half asleep with her dark hair tousled and lips curved in a sleepy smile, was Governor Elena Hart. The governor. The woman who could silence a room with one glance. The woman Avery had secretly admired for years, watching from afar as Elena broke barriers, fought against corruption, and carried the weight of millions on her shoulders. She wasn't supposed to be lying here. She wasn't supposed to look so human. Good morning. Elena's voice was husky, low, still soft with sleep. There was no trace of the commanding tone Avery had heard in speeches broadcasted nationwide. Just warmth. Just intimacy. Avery's throat tightened. I think there's been a mistake. Elena slowly sat up, sheets falling away from her bare shoulders. For a second, her eyes flickered with the same authority that had once made senators bow, but then it softened. Do you? She asked gently. Avery's pulse hammered so loud she thought it might shatter the glass walls. She had met Elena the night before, yes, she remembered that much. A fundraiser, where Avery had been working as a freelance photographer. Their eyes had met across the crowded hall, and something electric had burned through her, something she hadn't felt in years. Elena had smiled, and Avery, usually so careful, had let herself fall. One drink, one dance, one car ride, and now this. But this couldn't be real. I can't. Avery stammered, fumbling for her clothes on the floor. This isn't me. I don't do this. Elena leaned back against the pillows, studying her with an unreadable expression. Do what? Feel something? Let go for once. The word struck deeper than Avery wanted to admit. She had spent years building walls, shutting herself off after the heartbreak that had left her bleeding and distrustful. Love wasn't safe. Desire wasn't safe. And yet, one night in Elena's presence had unraveled everything. Still, Avery shook her head, pulling on her jeans with trembling fingers. You're the governor. I'm no one. This is crazy. Elena's lips curved, but there was no arrogance in Itonly sadness. Do you really think power protects me from loneliness? She asked softly. Do you think I don't ache too? The vulnerability in her voice was almost unbearable. Avery froze, halfway between leaving and staying. Her heart screamed to run, but her body refused. Because in that moment she saw Elena not as the governor, not as the untouchable figure from the news, but as a woman. A woman reaching out for something real. And Avery wanted to reach back. But she couldn't. Not yet. The fear was too strong. I'm sorry, she whispered, and without another glance she slipped out the door, leaving Elena alone in the morning light. The city outside was alive, merciless. Cars honked, strangers brushed past her, and Avery felt like she was drowning in a tide of reality. What had she done? She had touched fire and now her hands were burning. Yet all day, as she tried to bury herself in work, every click of the camera lens brought Elena back. Her laughter. Her warmth. The way her hand had rested so naturally on Avery's, as though it had belonged there forever. She tried to shake it off, but when her phone buzzed and she saw the message unknown number, yet instantly recognizable, her breath caught. You left before I could ask your name. Meet me tonight. Please. Avery's heart split in two. She knew she should delete it. Pretend last night never happened. Protect herself before it was too late. But her fingers betrayed her, typing before her brain could stop them. Where? That night they met again. Not in a penthouse, not in a glittering hall, but in a quiet jazz bar tucked away on the corner of Brooklyn Heights. Elena wore no suit, no mask of power, just a simple dress and a look in her eyes that made Avery's chest ache. You came, Elena murmured, as though she hadn't quite believed it herself. I shouldn't have, Avery admitted. Maybe not. Elena's smile was small, tender. But you did. And somehow that was enough. They talked. They laughed. They confessed pieces of themselves they hadn't shared with anyone else. Avery learned that behind the iron facade, Elena was terrified of being seen as weak. And Elena learned that Avery's photographs weren't just work. They were the only way she could capture beauty without having to risk her heart again. The world outside didn't exist in those hours. There was only the music, the clinking of glasses, and the way their hands found each other under the table. But Avery knew this couldn't last. Elena was too powerful, too visible. And Avery was nobody. Their worlds weren't meant to collide. Yet when Elena leaned closer, whispering, "I haven't felt this alive in years," Avery's walls began to crack. For the first time in forever, she wanted to believe. Avery woke up the next morning with her phone buzzing furiously against the nightstand. Headlines were flooding every outlet. Governor Hart spotted at a Brooklyn bar with a mysterious woman. The words might as well have been flames burning across the screen. Someone had seen them. Someone had taken pictures. Her stomach dropped. The world had found out before she and Elena had even decided what this was. By noon, Avery's inbox was packed with requests for comment, and strangers had already found her website, her Instagram, every corner of her life. She was a ghost until yesterday, and now her face was everywhere, tied to whispers of scandal. She wanted to disappear. But when Elena called, her voice steady but strained, Avery answered. "Don't say a word to them," Elena said firmly. "Not yet. Meet me tonight. My place." Avery almost laughed, bitter and broken. "Your place? Elena, the whole damn country probably knows by now." "I don't care about the country right now," Elena said, her voice low, vibrating with something fierce. "I care about you." The words should have been a bomb, but instead they twisted deeper. Because caring about her meant risk. Caring about her meant headlines, power games, enemies who would tear them apart. And yet Avery went. Elena's apartment was dark when Avery stepped inside, except for the faint glow of the city bleeding through the glass walls. Elena stood at the window, a glass of wine in her hand, her reflection fractured by the skyline. "They'll come after me for this," Elena said without turning around. "They'll call me reckless, unfit. They'll try to ruin everything I've built." Avery swallowed hard, guilt pressing like a stone in her chest. "Then maybe I should go. Maybe it's better if this ends now." Finally Elena turned. And in her eyes there wasn't fear, there was fire. "No," she said firmly. "You don't get to walk away again, Avery. Not because of them. Not because of what they think. You told me once you hide behind your camera because it's safer than feeling. But I'm done hiding. I want this. I want you." The words shattered every fragile defense Avery had left. "Still," she whispered, "you'll lose everything." Elena shook her head slowly, stepping closer. "Not everything. Not if I have you." And in that moment, Avery realized something terrifying and beautiful. Elena wasn't asking for permission to want her. She was asking for courage to keep fighting, and Avery was the one holding it back. So when Elena kissed her urgent, desperate, like a promise carved into flame, Avery kissed her back. And for the first time she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she was home. The storm outside didn't quiet overnight. If anything, it grew louder. Political opponents seized the story. Tabloids splashed their faces across front pages, and protesters shouted about morality and power. Elena stood in the center of it all, unflinching, refusing to deny, refusing to apologize. And Avery, though terrified, stood beside her. It wasn't easy. Nights were spent arguing, crying, holding each other together when the world wanted to tear them apart. Avery struggled with the sudden invasion of her private life. Elena fought back against threats to her career. They broke, rebuilt, and broke again, testing the limits of their bond. But through it all, love kept stitching them back together. One night, weeks later, Avery returned to the same jazz bar in Brooklyn. The air was warm, the music softer this time, and Elena slid into the seat across from her, exhausted but smiling. "They called me reckless again today," Elena murmured. Avery smirked, reaching across the table to lace their fingers together. "Maybe you are. Falling for me of all people." Elena's laugh was quiet but real, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. "Then reckless is exactly what I want to be." They sat in silence for a while, letting the music wrap around them. And Avery realized the fear was still there, it would always be there. But it was no longer louder than her heart. Because love, she finally understood, wasn't about safety. It was about courage. Months later, Avery stood backstage at a town hall where Elena was about to speak. She wasn't hidden in the shadows anymore. Wasn't pretending to be invisible behind a lens. She was there, present, proud. Elena walked out to the crowd, her presence commanding as ever. But when her gaze swept the room, it stopped at Avery. Just for a second. Just long enough. And Avery smiled because now the whole world could see the truth. The governor wasn't untouchable, wasn't alone. She was loved. And Avery wasn't afraid anymore. The night ended in the apartment again. But this time there was no shame, no running. Just two women wrapped in each other. The city glowing beyond the glass, their laughter soft against the hum of traffic below. Do you ever regret it? Avery asked quietly, her head resting against Elena's shoulder. Elena turned, pressing a kiss to her hair. Never. Not 1 second. Even if the whole world burns, I'd still choose you. Avery closed her eyes, letting the words sink deep into the cracks of her soul. For so long she had been afraid of love, of loss, of the chaos it could unleash. But lying here, safe in Elena's arms, she knew she had finally found the kind of love worth every risk. The kind that didn't just survive storms, the kind that thrived because of them. And for the first time, Avery let herself believe in forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.